All right, this is back to school boot camp nutrition team serving up safety. Welcome everybody. We will get started of why we're here. What are we going to do, and what are our needs out there in the nutrition field? So I pulled some statistics first, just to say, okay, what is trending? These are all of our schools for RAS, and just kind of pulled like where we're trending for types of injuries and body parts that are occurring to be injured more often. So this I found kind of interesting. Of course, the schools you get struck by is probably not in the nutrition area, but it's in the school district itself. So diving deeper, we can talk about that later when we get into some strain prevention. So top risks of injuries. Top five we have listed here as struck by, fall, slip, trip, fall sometimes too, and then strain by, cuts, and miscellaneous. And 44% of our schools have scores struck by, 27 is slip and falls, which could be inside and outside, depending on how things are set up as well. So that's something we can come and help with to prevent those injuries from occurring. So top injuries in food service. So this is just a generic, general survey that I kind of found diving a little deeper to see the common injuries that are occurring in the food industry area. Cuts, of course, are the top one involving just because guards are missing or the knives aren't sharpened or something like that. Slip falls, if we don't have the right mats, or just spills are not cleaned up as often or as quickly as we can. And then, of course, burns, and then that could be from not having proper oven mitts and so forth, and then strains from lifting. I know everybody has a certain process for bringing in the materials, the products, trying to figure out a way to reduce those exposures from the lifting and straining and so forth. So now, strain injury stages. So this is just kind of a step by step, what to kind of look for in your operations and assess what people are doing and how they're doing it. Symptoms only while they're working. If they're saying that I have a strain, it's not an injury, but it's starting to have some muscle soreness, that's something to look into. So if maybe we can come out and help with prevention of maybe a potential injury. Symptoms that last for a short while of time. So you're working and maybe doing a little bit repetitive stuff, trying to work on moving those job tasks around and rotating. That definitely helps with that type of symptom. And then, of course, recovering the following morning. So if it's just from one day, you feel better the next day, that's a good thing, but I want to make sure that we're looking into that of what's causing that in the beginning. And then symptom recovery, having a few days off, and then no symptom recovery. So these are just like some things to look for when people start talking about some fatigue and so forth while working. Early identification is definitely key. We encourage employees to either monitor what they're doing, how they can prevent it, offer suggestions. If there's certain tools like, hey, I looked at this might be better for serving, or this tool could be better for lifting. It's always good to have an open mind and see what other options are out there. Ask them to report anything, report all immediate claims immediately, as well as if there's any strains like, hey, I'm noticing this after doing this task. That's helpful just to kind of keep an eye on what's going on. And then have you asked the following questions? What are the most difficult things you do during the day? And do you go home with fatigue in the muscle area groups too? So if you're doing something that I can't do your own task when you get home, then we got to kind of look at that to prevent more injuries from happening. And then also looking in, do you have a safety committee? Can they look and assess what you guys are doing and reduce the exposures that are out there? Physical inspections of buildings from the safety committee or just even the maintenance department, depending on what their tasks are as well. Or doing a hazard assessment or a strain survey that we can assist with as well. So here is some topics. So what does your district provide for strain prevention or ergonomics intervention? These are the list of some tools. And I want you, if you can, jot down or request um, for a poll to see which one you guys do the most. And hopefully you see the poll question come up. There's many options out there. I know these are just probably some of them, but there's probably more out there as well. We have a few more seconds and then we'll see what the results are. Awesome. Thank you for entering. This is great. Um, I'd have to say yes, hands-on training seems to be the number one when I'm going to a nutrition team and kind of seeing what they're doing, how they're doing it. It seems to be the best too for working with staff, say, hey, this is how we should do this. There's always virtual training, online, um, and of course the job rotation. So this is good. This is a good variety. I like this. So keep that up. And if there's any questions or what else do we have for options, please reach out to your loss control consultant. So awesome. Thank you. Moving on. So we're kind of talking about lifting. That's one of our um, agenda items to kind of cover. Like, why are we focusing on safety? What is the main point of this? Trying to reduce potential injuries is the focus. So avoiding lifting issues and so forth. So in these pictures on the left, we have some C-spine, we call it. So they're bending over, they're reaching. It's not a straight back. It's not supported. Um, so working with this and we can help with ergonomics to help lift these boxes, moving depending on when you get your deliveries and where you have to put them. Sometimes they're not in the most spacious places that you have to put your boxes. They kind of in crammed corners or whatnot. I've seen a variety so far on my inspection. So this would be helpful kind of to work with the team, say who's delivering, how are we delivering it, where are you putting it on a platform, and how much reaching are we doing? So the left one is straighter back, lifting, pulling the box towards the person, and then the other one is a C back, just kind of reaching over and so forth. So tips for best posture. So depending on how heavy these items are that we're lifting and moving, keeping the item close to you helps reduce the pressure on the back. Farther away is more pressure on the back. So as we see in these pictures from putting the box close to you and then lifting it up, in one type of thing. The other one is getting down on the knees, moving it closer if it's a farther reach. So we're not just bending over and reaching in awkward positions. And then the third one is using the golfer's reach, just to have one balance on one leg and have the tip just to kind of reach and then pull it out for you. And of course, then pull it close to you and lift it up. So 4 tips for proper body mechanics. Kind of what we just talked about, the different types. So the one is the power squat. There's the half kneel, the golfer's bend, and then just keeping your nose and toes together as you're moving in the area in the kitchen. So the one on the right is the power squat. The second from the right is the half knee when you get down. And if you can't go down your knee because of the knees aren't very strong, then please don't do it because we don't want to have another concern as well. And of course, then your golfer's bend to reach, pick things up off the ground. And then the first one is keeping your nose and toes. And as you're moving from one station to another, making sure your body is moving with you at the same time. So nose, toes, hips, all moving at the same time. So this is a big one too, because of course garbages get full when we're working. So trying to make sure we're lifting them properly and not causing a shoulder or a back or arm and strain or so forth. So making sure we're lifting and getting down to the base of that bag and then pulling it close to you to lift up and then trying to just almost drag it over the box or the bin as well. Ideally, you do this right next to the dumpster too. You just roll it right there. So you just can kind of throw it in there and you don't have to carry it in, lift it in, and so forth. But I know everybody's setup is differently, and sometimes you can't do that. So again, some more pictures of just how to do things safely, keeping the reach to a minimum and keeping those boxes close to you. And then, of course, using carts if you can, so you don't have to lift them yourself. You put them in the cart, you push the cart, and then also then you're not as reaching in much. Tables seem to be a big one. I've seen a lot of refurbishing of some tables to make sure that they're easier to lift and move away and out of the place because they can't always stay flat in the kitchens and the cafeteria. So it's nice to make sure we're monitoring those so they are easy to pick up and move out of the way. If it takes more than one person, if they are a heavier, older model, then making sure we are using a two-person lift if that's possible. So safe lifting. Kind of what we've been talking about, but this seems to be a lot for multiple things, for lifting pans, for lifting boxes, for, just in general, life lifting. So the top one shows the seat back, the lifting away from the person, and then lifting, up and so forth. So here on the bottom is the correct posture to bend your knees, hold the load close, and then keep your back straight. So these are just many things, and this is actually one of our examples of our tip sheets that we can provide to get a nice visual, to do a quick little chat with people, and just a refresher. So this is one of our resources. And then pushing and pulling. This is used a lot depending on what we're moving and bringing in and so forth from vendors. So pulling, these are two examples of what not to do. And the reason why is you're in a weak and stressful position of your spine. So we're going to go through that. Even though it's a light cart with light items, you still going to want to make sure that they're in front of you versus behind you and pulling in awkward position. So we don't want to do that. So here's what we want to look for pushing. Take note of your load. How heavy is it? What you're working with? Is it stable? Be aware of your own limitations. Don't overdo it. I know if one trip versus two trips, how much time you have, that's all in consideration. That's one thing. And if need be, ask for help. Trying to reduce the size of the loads, the weight of the weight that you have to work with, as well as just preventing injuries because it's just too heavy at one time and break it up, so forth. So, and be as proactive as you can with the equipment that you're using, like that cart, making sure the wheels are operating correctly. They're not either squeaking or dragging. So we have it lubricated and monitored that regularly. And then, of course, do not try to catch a falling load, whether it's just hamburger buns or something, but that reach or that awkward position, we don't want to have something happen in that event. So here's another resource too, fatigue mats. There are multiple kinds out there. There are some that are better than others, but things to look for on these are making sure that they're flat to the ground, um, and they're in the right positions for people to work with. So sometimes I've seen them where there's a space apart and you have multiple fatigue mats. And then sometimes the up and down can be a trip hazard. So we want to make sure if you have multiple, put them back to back so they're together. And that's one even surface then for that, if you have that situation. So this is good. And then also just trying to work smarter. Like there's other ways, making sure the garbage is not full. When it's three-quarters full, then it's at least time that you can have space to maneuver the bag. It's not as heavy. And then also like lighter items on higher shelves. Don't put the heavy items on top because then you have to reach and then you're going over your power zone to reach the items. And then also just serving. Like this one, trying to make sure it's right in front of you. You're not reaching over it. And getting that out there. And then here, just making sure it's in your power zone, wearing proper gloves and mitts and so forth. So yeah. And here's an interesting one. Before serving, getting them ready, there's also a pressure point right there. So trying to maneuver it so it's less pressure point right in your power zone and you don't have to reach as much is ideal. I know you don't always have that possibility, but this is also something to address, or we can come out and look like what other options are out there that we can help prevent injuries. So here, just trying to work smarter, making sure knives are sharp, boards are clean, working with your bins to make sure that they're accessible and they don't have to reach too far to put the finished product in, using proper ladders, having assistance to remove boxes that are a little bit heavier. And you don't want to climb down the ladder with it if it's awkward as well. And again, we come back to these tables. I've seen them a lot where these are nicer. I think there's a quick release on those where just in the middle, they pop right up and there's not a problem. But there are some older ones that take a little bit more of a heave ho, and we want to make sure that we're having two people do those because that's a lot of pressure on your back and arms and so forth. And then just serving within your power zone too, right next to you. So here's an interesting one. So here is, I see a lot of this when we're serving or stirring and so forth. And this is what we call the chicken wing. So I want to make sure that we're not doing this because that's a little more strain on your shoulder versus stirring in front of you with your hand. Um, my daughter actually did this the other day. She's like, "Yeah, this is easier." And my husband goes, "No, you're doing it the wrong way." But she's like, "No, this is better for my arm." So the young ones can learn too. Just proper hand tools, making sure we have the right utensils to use. Sometimes with the quick triggers on your thumb, that can be as much as we're scooping for certain things. We want to make sure we have just quick scoops and watching the finger dexterity of what we're using. And there's first right there and easy to serve. So I know all situations are different. Table sizes for serving are different in the elementary schools versus high schools. Something to try to figure out how to accommodate and address. And I've actually had to look at a few things with um, sneeze guards on there. They're almost in the way of working, so we have to make sure we're adjusting not just the table height if we need to, or the sneeze guard height, and then of course making sure we can actually serve the kids. So here's an example of those ice cream scoops or scoops to serve food. Um, Here's a lot of what we see. Of course, those are the most prevalent ones that are out there, but this is the worst one probably for your thumb. So ideally, you have one that's hand. Um, and there's multiple ergonomic ones out there that you could use. And here's actually a link to look at some other options as well. But these are nice to have. And I actually did serve for a pork producer's dinner, and I had the potato salad, and that's what I was using. And after 1,200 people, it was very sore. So I just tried to start scooping and not even using that thumb release too. So yes, it definitely takes a toll. So, equipment tools to use for moving products, lifting, and getting to top of the storage units and so or racking that you guys have. Um, Convertible hand carts. These are very nice. You can use it this way, or you load the boxes up there and then pull it in. Um, that's a very sturdy one we recommend. And here's some other links to resources that we have. And we can send that out later too if we're not jotting all that down right now. Step stools, Little Giant is definitely one of the sturdy ones. 3 steps with the hand so you can hold on to. Ideally, you have the commercial step stools in the cafeterias, nutrition area, versus the residential ones that are being brought in. They have to, of course, withstand so much weight, not even the person, but also the product that they're bringing from the shelves and so forth. So that's something to think about. And especially for these, they're Little Giants are also labeled, so they have the weights, they have all the requirements on there. And sometimes the smaller ones or other ones do not have the required labeling on them too. So just something to think about. And of course, then carts. There's a lot of carts that are out there used for different things, for foods moving, for cleaning products moving, and so forth. Then this is one option, and I think I have a couple options in a later slide. So if there's any questions throughout the way, please feel free to jot them in the chat and we can kind of regroup that at the end and see if there's anything going on. So again, various carts here These are some nice ones, lighter but heavy duty or plastic ones that you can move around in the kitchen. This one was nice. I saw this one actually with a bumper on it. I like that one just to so you don't bump into equipment, bump into people. You get that little bit of buffer. And then this one is easy to move heavier boxes and so forth. So there's a variety that are out there that can be used for many, many things. But depending on what your situation is, how much room you have, that seems to be more of an issue, and where to store them and so forth. So trying to think of what cart can use for multiple things and then save on space too. So. So ladders and step stools, there's a variety out there. Ideally, you use the little giant just because it's more stable. This one, I believe, is a commercial one, but you also it's a little bit not as sturdy. So depending on what you're moving, where it's stored, it's just something to think about. Um, and what you have available, and of course, resources too are a part of this. So just all the great things that you can need, and depending on what tools you need for what you have set up. So, and then of course other hazards, knife and placement. It's I used to do a lot of restaurant inspections, so I've seen a lot of these of the boards or the boxes of storing the sharp knives. Ideally, best practice, you have these knives up, not in a drawer, so they can easily grab them. And then also, if you're sharpening them yourselves, marking down when you're sharpening, or if you have an outside vendor sharpening the knives for you, how often are you doing it? Making sure that you write when they were sharpened. And if you want, best practice would be when they're going to be sharpened next, so people know the rotation of those knives. So, oh, it was sharpened today. It's super sharp. I got to be, on the alert because it wasn't as sharp the last time I used it. So, just definitely something to think about. Um, and then keeping them clean, of course. So other things in the nutrition area that might not be thought of as much because we're not really focusing on that, but it is very important, which is the electrical boxes, making sure they're clear that we can get to them. Because ideally, in an emergency, you might not have time to move things around to get to them. I know space is definitely an issue. So if there's any way to keep those clear, mark it off 36 inches in front so nothing gets parked there, stored there, nothing. So we can always open those doors to get to the breakers and so forth. The other one is fire extinguishers, eye wash stations, all that has to have a clear space labeled, making sure that they are accessible at all times. So it does get a challenge. I understand that. Trying to figure out like how you can compact it in one area so it's easy to get to and accessible too. But yeah, making sure fire extinguishers, they're secured, they're marked, everybody knows where they are, and of course the training to use those items as well. And hopefully we never have to use them ever. So the next thing, this is for not just schools or nutrition area, it's basically all industries as slip, trips, and falls is a big exposure. Making sure we have proper tools, signage for that, making sure we can clean up the spills with the equipment, broom, mop, having that accessible right away if something would happen. An example like this is you can see it because it's a close-up picture, but if you were far away, you might not be able to see it because it kind of looks just like the color of the flooring. Um, Here's another one too. There is a spill here, but you almost can't see it because it's kind of incognito with the flooring. So putting those signs up or just saying if you have it, making sure it's addressed right away, and that one was addressed during the visit. So yes, it's nice to have the resources to monitor the area as well as having a plan in place to clean them up right away. And then, of course, wearing proper shoes. These are anti-slip shoes. So that's one way, and they actually look kind of comfortable. So if there's ways to do that, I know you guys are on your feet a lot. And of course, it's usually on concrete, making sure you have proper supportive shoes, as well as sometimes the anti-fatigue mats are great to stand on, but they don't move with your feet. So sometimes it's nice to just have a nice extra insert in your shoe, and there's your anti-fatigue mat in your shoes, and you walk with them versus having to walk on the mat. So just something to think about. There's definitely options out there. Or if you have questions like, what do you guys see people using? Just let us know because we probably have some resources. And then another one, just different shoes, supportive and protective too. So burn prevention. It's not the biggest trend of the losses that were occurring for schools in the nutrition area, but it's definitely something to make sure that we're maintaining and keeping an eye on, using the full length gloves. So we're not just protecting the hands, we're protecting the forearms from any burns, from lifting those large pans out of the ovens and so forth. Hopefully, you get there so it's right in your power zone and you're not reaching too far out. So it's easy to grab and it's more secure, but just make sure we're monitoring them and reviewing the mitts and the towels and so forth so that they're in good, clean condition. They don't have holes, they don't have burn holes from just being used and so forth. So something on a rotation to do. So cleaning materials, PPE, access to kitchen storage. This is one of the bigger items from a safety OSHA perspective, which in the state that kind of look at um, how you are storing things, where are the SDS, how often are you doing the training, and so forth. So this is definitely making sure it's organized. You have the SDS available, and people know where to look for if something would get on your skin. Do you wash it off? Do you leave it? Certain things react to water, so it's nice to know what to do in the event of certain items get on your skin or eye and so forth. So, but hopefully, again, that never happens and we go from there. So, just kind of recapping, like fight fatigue and repetition, kind of monitoring what we're doing, how we're doing it in the kitchen area, making sure we're stretching, um, varying your hand position so you're not constantly doing the same thing over and over again. Maybe even doing left hand, right hand if you're ambidextrous or just possibly um, able to do that. And then also varying positions or muscles used. So, trying to figure out if there's ways to adjust your body and sit differently and stand differently while you're doing things. It just kind of eases the stress or strain on your muscles. So here's a good one. This is actually a nice little break. So I know everybody's busy in the kitchens, but if you want us to take 1 minute and we're going to stretch our arms. This is a great one to kind of stretch after you've been serving. So please, at your area, just take a second, stretch your arm, your elbow, wrist, I mean, and then go the other one. Just take a break. Because sitting in these trainings do take a while, so it's nice to just get a good little stretch. And of course, doing these while you're working, not all the time, but just after a few hours working, okay, take a stretch. Um, and relax your muscles and so forth. So we have a couple other tools like this. This is very helpful because after you do that, your body feels a little refreshed and then you can and get back to your work. So I jotted down nutrition services job tasks. So I know there's probably more out there, but this is the main ones that I've kind of thought of when I'm assessing nutrition areas. Unloading food deliveries. Sometimes the team does it, sometimes it's other departments that do it, but it's nice to know what we're doing, how we're doing it. Lifting boxes, containers, pans. That's definitely exposure. And then carrying those boxes, lifting the garbage bags, depending if you in the nutrition area do it or a different department, and then pushing and pulling, obtaining those items on the shelves, and then bending and squatting. So just trying to think of other ways to reduce strain exposures from these job tasks that you have. So one way by doing it is actually doing a food service strain survey, listing all the job duties that you do in your department, and then we can come down and hand these surveys out, tally all the points, identify specific things in your department, work with your directors, supervisors, and then modify the surveys to fit what you guys are actually doing specifically. Provide the surveys to you, and then we can calculate and rank things to see what exposure is greater. And then maybe we can come in and customize the safety training and do some follow up with those. These are very helpful to say, yep, I'm pretty good on climbing a step stool. I'll give it no strain. Lifting boxes, sometimes depending on the boxes that are coming in, they're a little bit heavier. So I would do maybe a moderate, maybe a 7 or something like that. So this, if we do it for all the staff, it kind of gives us a good variety of what people feel that we're doing from the physical fatigue that you're doing in your job. So then we take those results. Whoa, not fast. Then we take those results from the strain, put it all together, and then we see like, well, this staff said this was a 10, and this one said it was a 4. So some might feel that it is a big strain for their job, and some might not. But it's going to be a great idea to put this all together and then focus on a safety plan to reduce these exposures and figure out if there's a way to get a different piece of equipment to help with scooping food or something like that. So this is extremely helpful to kind of get a good synopsis of what the tasks are, how people feel about them, and what we can possibly do to reduce them. So what came out of those surveys is just basically using those to keep more of an awareness, increase the morale and say, hell, they're actually helping us. And I went to a couple schools and said, if we did this, I think you would reduce the potential like, oh, you're here to help us. And that's exactly correct. We are here to help. I'm not going to be the inspector that just writes things up. I'm actually going to try to reduce the exposures as much as you can. Sometimes it's depending how it's set up, it is what it is, but there still might be a way to reduce any strain. Um, and improving like the process with this survey, you can see what areas like the scooping food. Maybe we just need a new piece of equipment and it'll reduce the exposures and they'll feel better. Everybody will feel better by using it. And of course, everybody using the survey, that would be extremely helpful to get a better overall view of what's going on. So when we do those, it's a follow-up to you do the survey, we do another like follow-up resurvey in like 6 to 9 months and see if they still feel the same way that they did 6 to 9 months ago when we first. Because some people like, yes, I'm just really strained, but in 6 months we kind of figured out a way to reduce that exposure and maybe it's better. So it's a good follow-up to kind of review those. And sometimes a safety committee can do that to review what we had, what we can move to reduce all those. And of course, just annual training to use those surveys or just customizing the training to fit your needs of what you have there. So takeaway for the employees, like just to regroup what we're kind of talking about today, using your best posture possible, ears over shoulders. I know sometimes your top part goes one direction, but your legs are still standing in the same direction. We want to try to make sure that our whole body is moving in the same direction when we have to serve or move and so forth. So it's just kind of a nice reminder to remember that we're not twisting and so forth. We can move the whole body. And then no C-spine, making sure your back is straight, supported, keeping those boxes or trays close to you, um, full of food. They do get heavy, so keeping them as close to your body as you can, wearing your other mitts and so forth. And of course, just monitoring the use of the different types of ways to pick up those boxes or materials or trays with power squats, the half kneel, the golfer's bend, and of course, trying to move your whole body and no twisting just to reduce that. And of course, moving and rotating your jobs. What are we doing now? What are we going to be doing, in an hour, kind of rotating those positions, and then providing and using the equipment that you have or something that we need to look into to assist with the jobs that you guys are doing. And of course, don't forget to stretch. I know people say, oh, I don't have time for that. But honestly, just sitting, I need to get up every few minutes or ever throughout the hour, like, okay, I'm here for 50 minutes. I'm going to go stand and go walk around. I'm going to come back just because your body is likes to stay in motion. So we want to make sure that we're always moving. And I know you guys are moving when you're in the kitchen. So that's probably not a problem, but we just want to make sure we're not straining the muscles too. So staying in good physical and emotional health, making sure we're drinking plenty of water because I know it gets definitely hotter in there in the kitchen than it does probably out in the school too. So that's something to think about too, and especially when it gets warmer like right now. um, but anyhow, so just lifting review, keeping the box close to yourself, keeping your back straight. And that's what this one's kind of making sure your back is straight from your head to your tailbone, and then keeping those boxes close to you while you lift. So, and of course, here's just another flyer, just a little reminder of lifting with your legs, not your back. Don't reach over and do the C-spine, just lift it closer. And just thinking about strain prevention. This is very important, which I know people might not think about strain prevention as much as they think like, oh, I got an injury, but how do we prevent those injuries? So do you know how and where the strains are occurring? And I think if you do one of those strain surveys, you definitely can identify certain areas, certain tasks that are increasingly having more concern that we can kind of address and so forth. So just using enforcing the policies that you have of how to lift, how to move things, um, using different tools if we need to, and then just promoting the awareness by training, discussing it, using those tip sheets that we have, or if you have questions, that kind of thing, we can assist with those. And then if there is an incident, doing an accident investigation, seeing how it happened, how it could have been prevented, were there any witnesses, did anybody have any suggestions, that kind of thing, or if I had this piece of equipment, this would make my life easier, and so forth. So encourage using the carts that you have, the other pieces of equipment, and then, of course, if there's any questions on ergonomics, contact your insurance agency or your loss control consultant to assist with any concerns, questions, that kind of thing. So I'm just trying to think. That was a lot of information, and I tried to keep it concise, but I know you guys are professionals at what you do. So if there's any questions or comments about the presentation, please feel free to jot that in the chat. But that was the main thing of just kind of the agenda of the why we're doing this, the focusing on the strains, the pushing and pulling focus, as well as what equipment are we using, and then the proper lifting, making sure that we're in our power zone and so forth. So that is all I have for today. I know we'll follow up with some of the links as well as I can send those resources that I attached into the PowerPoint. But feel free to, we have a few more minutes. You can jot some questions down or comments. That would be wonderful. If there's no further questions or comments, we'll stay open for a little bit more, but if you have anything, let me know. But otherwise, thank you so much for attending the presentation and look forward to working with you.